content of this channel is for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised. You're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. Please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell notification button. And please, feel free to share the video. Thank you. What's good, everybody? I'm the G with a PhD. You're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. It's the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up, no chaser. Before I get things started, I want to give a shout out to all the members of the Green Gorilla channel. I want to give a shout out to Rogish the Billmonger, Michael Ross, Gregory Oliver, Darkside Chaos, Greg, Raís Muajid, Darnell Smith, Antonio Ferrier, Papa Didas, Barry Little, Brotherly Love, 215, Alan Wiley, Mr. Valentino, Jason Hales, The Final Watcher, Black Men Being Brutally Honest, 77 Base X, Craig, Omni Americana, Cameron 87, Deshaun Nolly, Brian Peaks, Nelso, Apex Prowler, Kareen Henry, Doc LaRock, Julius Ferguson, B. Hillfire, J. Charles, Mark Holt, Lee Ways, Jeffrey Speed, The Face, Mark Swift, Show Me, Black Dog, God Collard, Raphael Brown, Deanne, Donald Watts, Cozy Corner, HipHop.catv, Coach DC, The Remedy, Kashif Caldwell, Ominous Black, I Am Black Man, Nichita, True King 337, Mr. Blue Collar, Barnolas, Kyle J. Sura, I'm Just Jules, Ad Media 83, Brian McMurray, TD Hip Hop Media, Drew Main, Artisan MC, Mr. Heat, Afro Analyst, Isa Abdul Zahir, Sir Anthony, ML Law, Charles Rogers, Universal 178, Black Swerve 404, Rashid Barnes, Aaron Smith, DH, C Truth the Revelator, Gold Professor, Arthur Unknown, Brian Williams, Kalon Jakala, Ricky Dawson, Cedric Bowman, True 7360, BK Born Shaheed, James Washington, Hostile Adept, Seven Coast Dojo, WPR1, BGS Ibmore, and Marvin Battle Jr. And I also can't forget my brother in heaven, Forrest Windu. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to all the people on the Patreon side. Chris York, Excalibur, Jason Warren, Soul Pen, Anu219, Pursuer Prisoner, Taz, Quaku217, S. Haywood, Dragon59, Supreme Ibmore, Adrian Hicks, Jay Bailey, Mr. Michi, Momal, William Ruffin, and Asangwa. Shout out to all of y'all, man. And much love and much props go out to y'all for supporting the Green Gorilla channel. Thank you so very much for your ongoing help and your support. I appreciate that. And also, I want to give a shout out to a brother by the name of Dr. Tiasan Johnson. What's cracking with you, bro? How you doing, man?
It's all good, man. How you doing?
You know, I didn't mention your name on purpose. As I read through my list, I said I'm not going to say his name until I get the opportunity to say it. Thank you up front.
Oh, man. It's all
and
good.
Directly. Thank you for supporting the Green Gorilla channel.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Love the channel, brother.
Always. Thank you, man. Love your channel as well. I always love the work that you do. So, at any rate, man, I want to give a shout out to all the people out there in the chat, man. Abuki Cabal, Ian Graves, I see you. Kalia Parrish Bailey, I see you. Valeri Kermu II, NC Worker, Apex Prowler, so Abaduya, Barry Little, and all the others, Rashid Barnes, Adam Williams, and many others. Herb Saint, what's up, New Orleans, baby? And all the other people out there in the chat, man. And Char, what's going on with you now? Malika Mabane, what's going on? Winston, what's going on? What's up? How y'all? Okay, so, today I wanted to have a conversation about Patrisse Cullors, Black Lives Matter, accountability, and Black Girl Magic all rolled up into one conversation. I know it seems like a lot, and some of those topics or those points of discussion may seem to be disjointed, but I think that they're all connected to some degree. And I wanted to have a conversation with you and with members of the chat, in fact, and I'm going to use the invite at some point to let people in and to have a conversation with us about this subject matter if they so desire. But Recently, Patrice Cullors resigned from Black Lives Matter as their executive director, and she's a co-founder of this movement, if you want to call it that. And she basically said that there was a smear campaign coming from the right, a far right group. But
Hmm.
she said that basically, the recent criticism is not the reason for her departing from the organization.
Right.
Now she says that she has other things that she wants to focus on. She's focusing on the release of her second book, a multi-year TV development deal that she has with Warner Brothers, and today will be her last day as the executive director of BLM.
Mm.
So I mean, basically she said, "Look, I started it. I've created the infrastructure and the support system necessary. So she's gotten the bones and the brick and the mortar started. So now she can just depart from it. She can leave, and the
Hmm.
time is right." So, what do you think about that, man?
Man, it's all kind of suspect, man. This is ridiculous, man. You know, but
What's funny about it, Doc? Like, I mean, I'm just saying, like,
I mean, look, okay. So when brother, Trayvon died, we know that that was the beginning point, right? The
I think,
beginning point
well,
of
well, I
BLM.
think Premier Rice was the beginning point that
Really?
they created the organization, but I could be wrong. But
I was hearing that it was Trayvon, but I know with Michael Brown, this is when you saw the elevation of it. And for many of us, there was a lot of things going on. Most people, I think, responded to BLM more as a chant. We didn't really know it was like a formal organization. And it really took, but like, it really took a brother like Darren Seals to kind of reveal that. So it's just interesting to look back on the last 6 years to see how many resources came into question, how many families who lost people to the police, to vigilante, murder, particularly black men. You see all these resources generated off the blood of black men going to organizations that have a questionable relationship to black men, and then for her to be, pulling up on all of these, multi-million dollar purchases that somehow didn't come out of any of the coffers that the donations went into, right? Somehow there's no relationship between these multi-million dollar purchases and the donations that came in. And then, amidst all the controversy, she all of a sudden has to go. Now, I'm one to believe that she was, probably working her way out anyway. There were long periods of inaction, but I'm not going to sit here and believe that this has nothing to do with the critique she got. She rightly received the critique she did, um, and it's just ridiculous, man. Because for black men, we look at this and we know we've been excluded from this movement that benefits off our blood, and to see this much generated, it's a slap in the face, man. It's a terrible
exactly,
face.
especially since nothing has actually changed in
Exactly.
relation to our condition.
Exactly.
So I mean, it's cool to raise funds and to get money allocated towards a movement, but at the end of the day, like, what does all of the fundraising have to do with us actually being able to still roam around in safety in the United States and
Right.
not have to worry about vigilantism or extrajudicial police killing? Because one could argue the implicit bias behind the reasoning for which these things happen to black men, they haven't been eradicated. And in fact, one could argue that the whole premise of the politics upon which BLM rests is a major catalyst and compounds upon the problems that black men face in contemporary United States culture.
Mm.
Namely, that, we're sexist,
Hmm.
we're abusers, and we engage in sexual misconduct, and we need to be called out for it.
Hmm.
And, so my whole view is has not BLM in and of itself well, what people don't know about it, because there's a difference between a chant and the actual organizational structure, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference between what's happening on the streets and what people perceive it as versus some of the principles upon which the organization rests. Now, we
Mm-hmm.
already know that this is an offshoot of Black feminist uh, ideals, BLM, and
Uh,
the women who run it, right? They
right.
subscribe to the playbook of the Combahee River Collective, which again, ad nauseum, is about sexism, racism, heteronormativity, and allegedly, and I say allegedly because it's questionable at this point, classism.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems to me as if this was the one of the original principles upon which Black feminism has rested, it seems like they have like forgotten that component of it at all.
Mm. Mm.
And it's all about money right now. It's all about classism and resources and power and prestige. It's not about leveling. It's not about making sure that the people who are at the bottom actually receive a fair shake or the structural justice. It's all about how can I line my own pockets.
Mm. Right. But I'll tell you, and I've been saying this for a minute. To me, the most dangerous aspect of getting this kind of funding is what I've been referring to as social gentrification. It has to do with who gets access to them and who doesn't, and what impact that has over the next couple decades. In fact, I mean, if you look at it, out of 30 different organizations, 23 of the organizations that they allotted resources from in this last couple of months, out of this 90 million that was generated in the last year, went to primarily LGBT organizations. Now, the problem with that is those aren't the people dying in the street. Those aren't the people that have that really spawned this movement. It's mostly been heterosexual Black men that have been getting killed. And we haven't seen any policy shift, any development of any substantive, direction coming out of, these funded organizations towards stemming that, just like you pointed to earlier. But what's worse is when these funds are actually impacted and used by the organizations that have access to them, they're going to continue an agenda that makes Black men invisible. They don't see us. So these resources end up going to generate issues, or generate institutions, I should say, that don't even recognize heterosexual Black men. That to
Man.
me is the bigger issue with this.
So what are we supposed to think about this? I mean, what are we supposed to do going forward? Like, I mean, one could argue, I don't think that you're going to ever see again this kind of money thrown at this kind of issue. I don't think that because if it happened one time, it's going to happen again. I mean, in relation to the money being mismanaged, misused, and so on and so forth. So the idea is, if people know that it's going to be used as an opportunity to siphon off funds and to make people at the top of the so-called organizational chain wealthy, and to not really have any substantive impact on the material conditions of the people that it's supposed to help, then how can people in good faith ever contribute again?
Mm.
Or why would they ever contribute again? It seems like you've dried up the well now, because people are going to be mistrustful moving forward.
Mm. Well, and that's everyday people considering contributing. We also have to look at the organizations, be they public or otherwise, that see this as an opportunity to finance a gatekeeping cadre, a gatekeeping class in the Black community. Where you can invest in it. See, here's the thing: you can invest in something like BLM, and as a white liberal, this makes you look good, right? But at the end of the day, it's not going to fundamentally change anything. It's not that type of organization. You're really talking about an organization that is invested in aggressive asking, right? This is principally what it is, but aggressive asking on behalf of women, girls, and LGBT at the expense of men and boys, and no conversation about those men and boys. So that organization is not really going to threaten, right, the power structure as it is, so they can become paid gatekeepers, and that's okay. Most they're going to do is show up and protest and get on TV. But if you pay them enough, they will be quiet. And that's one of the central aspects to this that needs to be kept in mind.
Gotcha. So here's the real big question. This is the $1,000,000 question I would like to ask you and anybody else out there who would pretend to have an answer to this question. What is so problematic with empowering, with addressing the issues related to Black men? What is the biggest impasse in this nation which prevents the elevation of Black men? What's the issue, man? What is impeding our progress? Why is no, if we know that when it comes to education, we're at the bottom of the list?
Right.
If we know that in relation to incarceration, we're at the top of the list.
Right.
When it comes to homelessness, we're at the top of the list. If we know that as it pertains to homicide, we're at the top of the list.
Mm-hmm.
What is the big issue with helping us remedy these situations and to have public policy and private corporations and private institutions and non-governmental organizations addressing our issues? What's the problem?
Well, shout out to my boy BGS. I think he said it a number of years ago. At the end of the day, men transform an environment. So if you invest in Black men to the point where they get on their feet, they're going to start demanding to change the environment they're in. And one of the central issues, that Black folk have been grappling with for over a century has been reparations. You get a cadre of educated, self-sustaining Black men in a position to demand changes and require that those changes be implemented. That's going to become an issue, right? So Black men in and of themselves have to be kept as a labor pool. They have to be kept inept and basically neutered, to make sure, because at the end, because the other thing is when you can invest in the women, the girls, and the LGBT and keep the men neutered and imprisoned and virtually asleep, you guarantee a fairly quiet and complicit organization that's not, that's really not going to push for the kinds of changes that Black men would normally demand. I mean, even if you look at Ferguson, man, one of the first things that jumped off, because Ferguson was an extension of a grassroots response to police brutality, to police homicide. Before BLM kind of usurped it, you know what I mean? It was a grassroots response. And at the earliest stages of it, and you saw this around the country in different cities responding to their own issues with police homicide, Black men were standing right there. And I don't care if you're talking about pastors, working men, or gangbangers, they were all standing there together with the community, and they were demanding change. This is one of the things I said to, one of the BLM figures that I was talking to a couple of years ago. I said, one of the things I noticed is every protest I've seen where Black men came out in equal numbers to Black women, the police showed up in riot gear. If Black men were there, weren't there in any significant numbers, I've seen marches that didn't even have approval from the city be not only allowed, but the police would cordon off the streets to let the marches happen. But when Black men showed up in equal numbers to their women, the police showed up in riot gear. That lets you know there is a fear of uncompromising Black men. And when we've all seen this fear, especially throughout the 20th century, when, whether you're talking about the Garvey movement, whether you're talking about, the Nation of Islam in the 50s, with Malcolm, whether you're talking about the Black Power movement, any organization that uncompromising Black men led scared the hell out of the country. And they don't want that.
So they're scared of us because we'll demand changes and we would begin to try to manage the environment in ways that other people don't want to see done. But what if our management of the environment would make things better for everyone? To me, it just stands to reason that if you empower Black men, they're going to empower their families.
Exactly.
You're not going to have child support when you got Black men who are actually working productively. And you're not going to need it. You're not going to have all of these devices that are designed to extract resources from us that we don't have to begin with, because we'll be at the helm. But
Right.
I think that the issue is a lot of people don't want us at the helm because us being at the helm would be regression to them. It would be sexist to them. It would be patriarchal to them.
Hmm.
So I guess that's why we got to be kept down.
I mean,
I,
yeah. I mean, yeah. Yeah.
I
Black.
just want to know. Yeah.
Good. Good.
But let's talk about this black girl magic component. So you've already made a statement about what you consider black girl magic to be, the causes of it. You call it again like a dual black economy where one group of persons have been given or granted resources from the federal government, state agencies, and from corporations, and another group has been denied those same opportunities. And so the magical component is really not magic at all. It's just extra support and help, whereas
Hmm.
another group of people haven't been given any help at all.
Right.
And it could also be environmental factors which contribute towards the enhancement of black girl success, but lead to a kind of a condition in which black boys don't get to flourish and function and thrive. I did a show, I think the day before yesterday, and it was talking about how black women or black girls as a group are able to more easily, given they're growing up in poverty, they're more easily able to climb up the economic ladder as opposed to young black boys.
Hmm.
And this might have something to do with the organizational structure of black families itself, right? Where you see black girls looking at their mothers, seeing them work and, you know, seeing them matriculate through the system. But when it comes to the boys, maybe the boys don't see those role models. Maybe the boys don't have those same kind of support and networks that the girls get. So what do you have to say about that, man?
Well, I think you've already called it, man. I think you're precisely right. Much of the time, these boys don't even generally see men in positions of authority, which has a lot to do in the long run with how they see themselves, and what they don't get to see. I mean, and you can take it back further than the mother. I mean, particularly when you reference the girls, they're seeing their mothers and their grandmothers as heads of household. Black men have basically been in many instances, replaceable. They've been, we've been in a position where the family framework is such that women can have children and develop this kind of communal environment, especially in the urban north, where she's able to pull from the state, she's able to pull from girlfriends and support systems, and men come in and invest and leave at her whim. And that kind of continues. So men are not a necessity in many ways. And so when you have boys that are raised seeing that, they don't see their own value, and you have girls raised seeing that, they see what they need to emulate when they are in position. And so this is the kind of dynamic that gets replicated, from beyond from every generation. So I think we're in a situation now where young men have grown up seeing men as expendable.
But then the question is, well, why aren't men rushing to support one another? What makes it so difficult for men to actually say, okay, look, nobody's going to come save us. Nobody's going to come help us. What are we going to do to help be a support system for one another? Why is that not happening?
Right. That's one of the things that we grapple with even here on YouTube, right? I mean, most of us as men have been raised to, kind of really see each other as competition. That's one of the things we've noticed, especially since the rise of feminism and black feminism. We've seen those women, kind of support each other, even academically. They cite each other in their research, they support each other's books. Men still continue to compete with each other to the point where coming together is still something we got to learn to do. And we have to, and I don't suggest we do it in a way where we're emulating what feminists are doing it, but men have to define what that looks like today. And it's needed. It's definitely needed. Now, there are elements of the manosphere where you see elements of that, but at the end of the day, man, we got to figure out how to take this to another level and support brothers. That's why one of the recent shows I was doing had to do with, how black boys are treated in the educational system and what's needed. And one of the things that's needed are black men in positions of authority that can actually create environments just for black boys. But that requires the support of other black men at the very least. And that's one of the hurdles that we still have to jump. How can we, reconnect as brothers? How can we, support one another and yet use this drive to compete in a constructive manner. There's still a lot of tearing down that we do, and we got to reverse it.
But one of the things I hear said is, like, okay, well, the brotherhood exists, but there are other people who really don't deserve to be part of our brotherhood.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get what I'm saying? It's
Mm-hmm.
like, this is what I don't understand about that way of thinking, right? We're all we got. There's not too many men who, first of all, understand that there's a need for black men to support one another. But it seems like for some reason there's something getting in the way. Now, there's one brother who's said something in the chat. They don't want others to get ahead of them. But then my question is, get ahead of them going where and doing what? That's the issue. Get ahead of them where? On YouTube? Get ahead of them where? In corporate America? Get ahead of them where? So, that's the issue that I'm seeing. Like, to me, what I see is a lot of men behaving like crabs in a bucket, clamoring to get out of the bucket. But none of us are getting out of the bucket. And there are a few people who are successful on YouTube. But why is YouTube the standard of progress in relation to black men and boys?
Right. Right.
If this is the idea that we're working with and the frame that we're working with, I believe we're going to be continuously doomed. And not to say that there's anything wrong with social media. I think social media is great, okay? Because it's unfiltered. People can say whatever it is that they want to say. And, ideas that would be filtered, they just don't get filtered, okay? But then the problem is there's a lot of vitriol and animosity taking place. And I'm just trying to figure out it would be one thing if we didn't know that most of us are in agreement about most of the issues confronting black men. But what the hell is going on here, man? Like, why is it so difficult for men to support each other? Now, black men in particular. Now, let me just say this. Racism is a team sport, is it not?
Right.
When they came over here, you didn't see one person come over here. They came over here in boats. Now, they competed with one another in relation to their national or ethnic origin. So you had the main people who came to colonialize the New World were the Spaniards, the Portuguese. Those were the first to get here, right? The Portuguese and the Spaniards. Then come the French, and then come the English. Okay, and not to say that there weren't others, okay, from the Western world or from Europe who came to plant their flags and to create extensions of their own national spaces elsewhere in the world. Not to say that, but those were the principal players. They came as teams. They didn't come as individual men seeking to outdo one another. To some degree, yes, but
within a framework.
And I think the issue is black men don't have any framework. We're searching for one, and nobody is able to establish one, because as soon as something is proposed, then someone else says that, well, that doesn't coincide and co-align with my values or principles, so that needs to be discarded. Screw you. You're part of the problem. You're the issue. Right? And I'm like, dude, if we keep going through this, we'll never get anything done. And I'm just amazed at the organizational structure of these women and how they've been able to rally behind one another and to support one another, and how we have been left in a catatonic state of shock, rendered, impotent and not able to do anything.
Well,
but we're supposed to be the builders. We're supposed to be the most rational. We're supposed to be, the most logical. And I see us doing things that are absolutely illogical. I see a lot of animus based on emotion and resentment, which prevents anything from actually occurring. But I don't want this to jump off into a critique about black men today, though. But
hold on. There's relevance to that, though. I'm glad you brought it up, because when we talk about, what black men are doing. One of the things we got to also look at is leadership, and part of the difficulty we have is unchecked individualism, but unchecked competition. If you look at men's institutions, and you alluded to this when you talked about the colonial groups that came over, but you can even talk about it in terms of athletics. You could talk about it in terms of military structures. Individual competitions is hampered in by a framework. You know what I mean? We're going to compete for who gets elevated to the next level, but it's not so much that everybody's going to suffer. The competition gives way to the larger agenda. We have to be able to develop that. Now, I will say one of the downsides, one of the limitations that women have in terms of how they function. If you look at BLM, notice their leadership structure was all around this idea of a decentralized, leadership structure. And we were told that this was going to be cutting edge. Remember that? In
Oh
2000,
yeah, of course.
this was cutting edge. It was no leaders. Everybody, no, they kept black men out the room, but there were no leaders. Everything was just supposed to happen. And then once money got involved, what happened? Right? What happened?
Oh man, to me, it just illustrates that anybody, any group of people from any demographic, can fall prey to the temptation of money and mammon. Anybody can fall prey to the money game, the cash out game. You can call it the grift game. I've been accused of being a grifter. Although I want one man to step up and say, I've taken some money from him in an ill-gotten way. I would like to see one man from the manosphere establish that claim. I'll wait. I want one man to come to the chat and demonstrate that I took some money out of his mouth that wasn't refunded to him or given back to him by means of some sort of, deceptive practice that I've engaged in. I would like that man to step up. I'm keeping it 100 because it just seems like we create all of these dissensions and all of these practices of resentment and I'm just tired of it, dude. Like we're still left out. We're all we have. There's nobody coming, man. There's nobody going to do this for us. Nobody. Yeah. And that's the issue. That's the issue I have. So, but on to another issue, man. On to what you were talking about a little bit earlier about a structure, a prevailing superstructure that can kind of sublimate or rein in competition and make competition positive as opposed to negative. Okay.
Right.
What does that even begin to look like?
Well, I mean, again, we've seen it, whether you're talking about, organizations like the Nation of Islam, whether you're talking about, hell, you could take something as simple as a football team, right? Everybody on the team who's on the field is competing with each other. Hell, some of the coaches are competing with each other to see who can actually get elevated. But all of them submit to the larger structure, which is the team has to win. And the only way a team wins is as a team. You know what I mean? So as long as the individualism and the competition don't hurt the team and its overall goal, then it's all good. But everybody has to at least submit to the idea that the team has to be the one that has to be the primary priority. I don't think we really have that amongst, black men on YouTube. We don't have a sense of a superstructure. We see ourselves all in competition with each other. You know what I mean? And this is interesting because now we have black men more and more every day coming to the space to figure out what is this. And the reality is what brothers have been talking about here. The reason it resonates is because what we're saying, we're only giving voice to what the environment has helped shape in black men's answers. I mean, for the real, every idea we have, every ideology we espouse has already been in action. I've known brothers since the 1980s who've been SYSBM, but they never had a hashtag. You know what I mean? I've known brothers that for every philosophy in the manosphere, there are groups of black men that have been acting it out long before it had a name. The manosphere gave it a name, created a vocabulary, and then gave it a logic that was explained publicly. But many different pockets of black men were doing different things in line with that already, because all of this is shaped by the environment. And the environment black men live in left us with only certain types of options. That said, we haven't produced the next stage of that, which is the superstructure we're talking about. So for right now, this shit is the wild wild west. And if you got more subscribers, if you got more people watching your lives, if you got more donations, I'm coming at your head. And if I can embarrass you, dox you, eliminate you, beat you in a debate, whatever I got to do, I may be able to get your spot. And that's the priority I'm seeing people really pushing on right now. And why does he have more numbers than me? Who is he? Why does he? I'm like, look, if our boys can't even get out of freaking fourth grade and we're not willing to at least address that, then what are we doing? So I'm saying the superstructure has to answer at least one larger question. And if our base is the survival and the well-being of Black men, then to me, that's the beginning of the superstructure. What is it that Black men need? How do we prioritize ourselves? Every other group seems to be able to do that. We have to be able to make this competition thing work for us and not against us.
That's a good point, man. That's a good point. So we already know, going back to BLM, right? We already know that there were men in the beginning like Darren Seals who called these people out and said, look, these people are not activists, they're activists. These people are they do work on social media in order to generate money and recognition, but they're really not actually doing anything to help the people who are exposed the most to the issues that they say that they're actually about. Okay. How was it possible? And I want to go back. Let me go back to another point because before I forget this, okay, I want it to be understood that a leadership model based upon Black women doing the work, right, that traditionally was performed by both Black men and women for the collective, like especially during the civil rights movement and even before then, right?
Right.
You had Black men and women working together in organizations like SNCC. Okay, they were working together in the Black Panther organizations. Okay, but that model was discarded for this new Black feminist model, which was supposed to be the most progressive of all. And the reason why it was supposed to be the most progressive was because Black women were deemed to be, especially Black women who were lesbians, right? They were perceived to be the most oppressed group of all groups in Western culture.
Right.
Right. And I mean, if you don't believe what I'm saying, let me share with you the screen right now. I'm gonna share the screen. I'm gonna go to a window. The window is going to be Chrome tab. Why can't I find it right now? Did I get rid of it? Yeah, I got rid of it. So let me find it again. No, here it is. Can you see that?
No, not yet.
Can you see it now?
I don't see anything.
Man, why? Can you see that?
Now something's opening up. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the Combahee River Collective.
Always during the show.
Always doing the show, man. Decline, man, decline. Okay. So, okay, sorry about that. I apologize for that. But anyway, this is what they say. This is the second section, I think, of the Combahee River Collective. It may be the third. Okay, it's the third section. It says, the psychological toll of being a Black woman and the difficulties this presents in reaching political consciousness and doing political work can never be underestimated. There is a very low value placed upon Black women's psyches in this society, which is both racist and sexist. We are all damaged people merely by virtue of being Black women. We are dispossessed psychologically and on every other level. And yet we feel the necessity to struggle to change the condition of all Black women. And then she makes an allusion or a reference to Michelle Wallace, who basically says we exist as women who are Black who are feminists, each stranded for the moment, working independently. So, I mean, even they were grappling at one point in time with, black women doing their own thing, maybe even perhaps trying to outdo each other, maybe perhaps even having ideological differences amongst each other. Okay. But anyway, so they're working independently because there's not yet an environment in this society remotely congenial to our struggle. Because being at the bottom, we would have to do what no one else has done. We would have to fight the world. And then the overall document goes on to say Wallace is pessimistic but realistic in her assessment of Black feminist position, particularly in her allusion to the nearly classic isolation most of us face. We might use our position at the bottom, however, to make a clear leap into revolutionary action. If Black women were free, it would mean that everyone else would have to be free, since our freedom would necessitate the destruction of all systems of oppression.
Mm.
And see, this is the thing that I think has driven the whole narrative of Black feminism since its inception. I mean, the idea that we are at the bottom.
Right.
And if we're free, we will automatically eliminate the things that hamper everyone else,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or the things that keep everyone else at the bottom, because we're at the very bottom.
Exactly.
But I think that historically, and I think that empirically, we can now begin to challenge the validity of this argument. Well, I mean, not the validity of the argument, but the matter of factness of the argument.
Mm-hmm.
Because we can see, arguably, Black women being more free than they've ever been, but this has not resulted in the uplifting of everyone else in the Black community. It seems to have the exact opposite or inverse effect,
right,
that they have postulated in this document.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seems to me, and you write me if I'm wrong, as Black women get richer and they become wealthier and more powerful, life is becoming more and more difficult and intolerable for Black men. What do you have to say to that?
Moynihan scissors. When men get increased employment and resources, families improve. When women get it, they don't need men. Especially in the Black community, this is the perspective. And to be clear, just to add to what you brought in a second ago, there were tensions with women in their organizations, and those tensions still exist to this day. Class tensions, ideological tensions, those things didn't change. There are still tensions between heterosexual women and lesbians, with trans women and men. These tensions, they're still there. But you're right in that they have identified a superstructure which is rooted in an idea of them being the most oppressed, right? And intersectionality as an ideology became the religion of the group. The religion of the group is the more categories that you fit that are considered oppressed, the more oppressed you are. And like you said, that little piece of logic at the end is what shifted it all around. If you are liberated and you comprise all of these different categories, female, Black, les, handicap, old, whatever it is, if all of those, trans, if the more of those categories you have, the more liberated you are, the more liberated everybody is. Once they all submitted to that as some type of religious structure, it provided a logic for everything they did. And so one of the things I noticed, and I've said this, for example, last year, this is a small thing, but this is how pervasive this idea is. Every female, well, I'll say about 90% of my females that come into, say, my writing classes, if you give them a subject to write about, you just say, you can write about whatever you want. 90% of them will choose to write about women. 90% of them. What do you think happens when those young women become older and they start working in organizations like Goldman Sachs, organizations like MasterCard, Google? Well, what ends up happening is when they get a chance to create programs, who do you think they prioritize?
They're going to prioritize themselves.
Exactly. it's this kind of solipsism, but it's supported by this idea that they are the most oppressed, and if they do better, everybody will thus do better. But in order to do that, they have to pretty much not even be able to see their own sons, let alone husbands, boyfriends, fathers, brothers, you name it. But this is what's going on. So when we go back to the millions, if not billions of dollars that we've seen organizations like BLM be able to get, the danger is not just the resources. The danger is the mind state of what they do with those resources, which comes back to this very solipsism we're talking about. That's rooted in this intersectional idea. That doesn't hold up when you put it close to the data and you begin to look at where Black men fare, but they don't care because prior to what is actually true is what they believe, and what that belief is shaped by in this religion of intersectionality is that they have to be the priority for the betterment of all. They have to be the priority, no matter what expense it has to others, which again they're oblivious to.
And that's the issue. So I've seen many people try to take intersectionality and use it as a way to deal with issues relevant to Black men and boys. But Black male scholars are, for the most part, against this. And I want you, if you can, to kind of give a reason why intersectionality is not the greatest tool to use to try to deal with the circumstances, the unique circumstances facing Black men. Because I read an article yesterday, not yesterday, but the day before yesterday, that said intersectionality could be used to help develop a new deal for Black men.
Right.
But why would that not be a good heuristic to utilize in order to try to make the situation better for Black men? Why does intersectionality not work for us?
Well,
I know that's a hell of a question
right.
to ask.
But here's the thing. So if you look at welfare, right, there was a policy at one point in time called the man in the house rule, which basically meant that a family couldn't get welfare if the man was present, right? That's not technically used anymore. However, and I provided research on this in my show late last year. The research shows that the practice of extending welfare to families is still very much in line with the man of the house rule, even though it's no longer a formal rule. So I think in the same way, when you look at something like intersectionality, when it started, the basic argument was that Black women were the most oppressed group along the axes of race, class, sex, and gender, right? They said Black men were right there next to them in all of those categories except for gender. They said, Black men were oppressed by race, sex, and class, but they were privileged by gender. And this was based on a very simplistic argument that men, held the dominant position in a patriarchy. So instead of actually looking at Black men as victims of a white patriarchy, they kind of subtly argued that Black men were a part of the patriarchy because they were men. Even though white men were going out their way institutionally to eliminate Black men, we were supposedly in it. And therefore, we must have had a Black patriarchy because white men had a patriarchy, and there's one patriarchy. And so it just seems to be like an octopus. It works all over the place. And then at the same time, it works in your immediate environment. They never could prove the existence of it. We've seen no data for it. When you ask feminists to explain it, they start giving you individual examples of men that beat their wives, but they can't point to a structure that Black men have ever used to dominate and exploit Black women and girls, because there hasn't been. That said, that was the basic idea. So what intersectionality argued was that men were privileged by gender and oppressed by everything else, and women were just oppressed across the board. Now, as intersectionality began to develop and evolve, no, they don't formally use that logic anymore. It's not articulated openly as much as it was in the late 80s and early 90s, but it's still the praxis. It's still the practice, just like what I was saying with welfare. It's still the dominant practice of, kind of sidelining Black men, unless our deaths or incarceration numbers benefit the overall argument. Then those numbers can be brought in. But for the most part, Black men are eliminated from the discussion based on this earlier practice of seeing us as privileged enemies of sort. And this is what Tommy Curry's one of his later papers a few months ago was dealing with when he was talking about the way Black men the way the black men were framed by racist scholarship, and he identified the feminists that pulled that racist scholarship at the beginning points of early 1980s black feminist research. They pulled it straight from white racist scholarship, and that became the dominant narrative for how they saw black men. So by the time you get to Kimberly Crenshaw in 89, and she's talking about intersectionality, this is the dominant narrative on black men that she's pulling from to make this argument that we're benefited because of our gender, and therefore we help to oppress them. You know what I mean? So this is where
Right.
this comes from. That's the structure.
Yeah, another thing that's interesting about patriarchy that feminists had done, and this is also connected to the work of Tommy Curry in one of his recent papers or chapters. I think it's named "Reconstituting the Object." But in this paper, he talks about patriarchy as a kinship system, a racial kinship system, and it doesn't just involve, you know, men lording over women. It also is an institution in which men lord over other men.
Mm, mm,
Even white men lord over one another within the domain of patriarchal kinship systems.
mhm,
And it's not that women always preoccupy, a subordinate position within the framework of it,
mhm.
which they continuously argue that they do. Okay.
Exactly. Right.
So if you are a plantation owner and you're considered to be the patriarch of a family, correct?
Mhm,
You would have control over your wife to the extent to which, she's your wife. She can't own property in some states, but in other states she could. So this whole idea that women couldn't own property in America, that was only true for some states. It wasn't true of every state.
mm.
Okay. But you mean to tell me that her son, this woman's son, and then you have rankings amongst sons as well. You got the firstborn, secondborn, thirdborn, and then what if you only have daughters? Because some men only have children that are daughters.
Mhm,
You get what I'm saying? So the idea is that, so you mean to tell me that a woman who is married to the most powerful man on the plantation has no say over or impact or power, privilege over her sons or her daughters
yeah.
or male and female workers who aren't owners? Because you did have indentured servants as well. I mean, there were white people who occupied plantation life beyond that of being an owner. Okay. And then also you had the black male and female slaves. So I mean, this idea that patriarchy was a system where all men lorded over all women
Right.
is belied by the historical circumstances in which the dynamics of patriarchy played out to begin with,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
But no one wants to pay attention to that. I mean, it just seems like we've taken these concepts and these ideas and extracted them apart from historical reality in order to actually privilege a group of people who were already privileged to begin with, and to
Well,
make a minority group out of a group of people who, to be quite honest, they occupied the largest demographic in the United States.
mm, absolutely.
How does that work, man? How
And
how is it that with the
they
wave
did
of a
more than that.
wand, huh?
I said we know white women had a substantial position in that. Absolutely. I mean, one of the things you mentioned when you talked about the plantation, not only did they have power over their sons, white women were the ones that negotiated deals with other plantations. What we've got from about white women during slavery was that they were in a gilded cage. This was the influence of white feminism on the historicity of slavery. What took time for some of us to actually be able to come out with was that no, white women actually had a position of authority. They didn't just sit there and look pretty and reproduce. They were in charge of the space. They were in charge of education of the children. They were in charge of the domesticity of the plantation, but they were also in charge of negotiating deals and contracts with other plantations. I mean, they had an invested position in the establishment of the slave owning family. And they managed, and this is really the power of white feminists, they managed to change the narrative to the point where now most people can't point to what white women did except for be oppressed by their white husbands, almost to the degree the slaves were. This is the current imagination about it. Everybody was white men were privileged. Everybody else was enslaved by him. White women have what did the comedian Bill Burr say? They
swung their Gucci booted feet over the fence of oppression, and then all of a sudden, and he says like army generals should be studying this, but you know what? I think they've already studied it. They already know what it is. That you can't tell me that the most educated and the most powerful group of men in the world don't know. I mean, these are people who develop counterinsurgency measures to prevent people from rebelling and, from people being able to, create some sort of defense against imperial oppression. These people know this. They are aware.
Mm.
That's just I think anything else is a lie. I'm just keeping it real. Now, all of this talk about, well, they're watching, Big Brother's watching. So what, man? Like, the reality of the situation is there's no way that they don't know that this was a ploy to suppress black men's progress and black people's progress as well. Because this is the one thing that really eludes me. This is the one thing that really confuses the hell out of me, right? So it seems like black women have taken up the banner of feminism and they run with it more vigorously than white feminists.
Mm.
And the reason I say this is because the practice of black women is actually feminist, whereas these white women just merely profess it. But I know white feminists who go home to their husbands.
Right.
Literally. I mean, they have intact mononuclear families with daddies present. They don't take daddy to family court. They don't take daddy and file child support orders on them. Daddy's there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just being honest. Like, I literally know white feminists and they got husbands in the home. Okay.
Sure.
But it's also true that black men, and I don't know what studies, you probably have more information about the studies than I do, but black men are among the most progressive men in relation to gender and sexual equality for women, even more than white men.
Yep. We're somehow the face of abuse. We're the face of misogyny, and yet we're statistically the most progressive group of men who are more involved with their children than any other group of men.
But how is that possible, Doc? How is it possible that black women have been caught into? We talking about the most educated group of women, right? Recently, I mean, one could argue that they're on the rise in relation to their educational level. We know that white women have more master's and doctoral degrees and more college degrees than black women do, percentage-wise. We know that this is true, okay? And if I got to go pull the stats, I'll pull them, okay? So white women are the most educated group of persons in the United States. But the question is, how can a group of women who are more educated in terms of formal education than their own men, how can they not be aware of these issues? How can they not? I mean, if they're reading this literature and they're the most educated at every degree level, from master's to doctoral programs to doing postdoctoral research and the whole nine, why is it that they aren't aware of what's going on politically, such that to understand, or what is preventing them from being able to understand that if you put black men down, if you make it an issue to try to elevate yourself ideologically above and beyond your brothers, your fathers, your uncles, your sons, then you're creating weakness for the entirety of the group as a whole. What is the issue with this, man?
Well,
what is the source of this enemy and this glaring bankruptcy in relation to political understanding strategically related to race? I am baffled by it because I just don't understand it. I'm confused. How can you be so educated but be so aloof and naive in understanding about strategy related to demographic dynamics and power struggle? I'm confused. I just don't get it.
It's not that they're oblivious to it. It's that their strategy is their priority. And from what I can tell, their strategy is to amass power. What we've been seeing, and I include BLM in this, probably BLM is really one of the tips of the spear, if we could use that, or tips of the trident, if you will. The idea is control. The gynocracy is in a position to control the black community, and there's no investing in black boys and black men does not support the larger plan of prioritizing women and girls to take control and to be in a position of leadership. So what I said earlier is I see BLM is one of the tips of the spear in terms of this, right? Because what did they do? They used black male deaths. They created an organization and told people very early on black men cannot lead in this organization. They said the reason was because black men were sexist. And if you look back at the civil rights movement, the black power movement, they were so sexist that now it's time for women and LGBTs to lead. And so once they created that logic that justified the use of black male death to take the social equity out of those deaths and then turn it around and apply it only to black women and girls. And then from there, be able to generate resources. Now you add in, you got private companies starting to donate, or what they have been the last number of years. They've been able to prioritize all of those resources strictly for black women and girls. What we're seeing has been a coup that's been in development since at least the 1970s, but it's reached a fever pitch where we're now starting to see it in such a brazen way that a lot of us don't even know how to interpret it. It's a coup. So they're not oblivious to, where black men are. They just don't care because the plan that they're prioritizing is their own rise. Now, I agree with you. I think in the long run, you shoot yourself in the foot with it, but they're so preoccupied with this coup that's the only thing that's of importance.
So I want to address a comment, not because we allow for. So I put the invite in the chat, and at this moment, anybody who wants to step up and to comment can. But I want to. We got the Gnostic, the black pill Gnostic in the house, man.
Not that guy. You didn't tell me.
Some people call him the master teacher. I just call him, I just call him what's a good friend and a good dude, man. What's up, BGS, man?
From one black pill person to another, man.
Hey, man, if the shoe fit, if the cat fit, let him wear it, man.
Yeah, that's how come I actually produced my Myth of White Womanhood series, and the one that got people most up in arms was the one by James Earl Jones, where he said that that black women like wielding the rolling pin, right? In other words, they were put in position of power over black men, over the black family, and over time they grew to like it, and they refused to give it up because that was the biggest problem with really it goes all the way back to Sojourner Truth with A9 Woman, when black men wanted to when the black soldiers fought to get the vote, they were going to get the vote. One of the biggest protesters of black men not getting the vote wasn't just white women, it's also black women too, because they didn't want black men to lord it over them. They like having power in the relationship. They like being able to dictate the relationship. They like what Diane Stewart calls the Africana kinship network, which is a matriarchy. And they like being able to go from man to man to man and still have their children supported. They like having that freedom. That's, what Zora Neale Hurston said back in 1936. The two freest people in the United States are white men and black women, because they can do what they want. Black women who do not want to give that up, which is why they protested against, even though everything that Moynihan said was correct. If you wanted to rebuild the black family in this society, I'm not saying in any other society, but in this society, he actually gave the prescription, which turned out to be true. And it's still today, they do not like black men being elevated, because they will bump them out of position of power. They don't like that. That's how come they went against My Brother's Keeper. Because I saw recently a piece from a law professor, talking about the Moynihan Report and My Brother's Keeper. Because black women do not want a all male led all male led anything, right? Anytime that black men have their own thing, right, their own organization, black women have to be part of it. They have to have some position of authority within a male dominated space.
Yeah,
You know, go ahead.
and this is why, I think that having a new deal for black men is going to be an ideological nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I think so is because if they were that adamant about the constitutionality, the legality of my brother's keeper, then
Mm-hmm.
what are they going to do with a new deal for black men? They're gonna cry bloody murder.
Mm-hmm.
They're
They
gonna they're
always
gonna
do.
they're gonna cry foul. Like, no, you can't do this. But
Yeah.
even if there's evidence that demonstrates that black boys are hemorrhaging, they're not doing
Mhm.
well in the
Mhm.
familial structures that they've set up. But
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, they're demanding men for themselves to be a certain way. To be quite honest, I'm beginning to believe that that's just a lie. That they really don't want those kind of men at all. That they
They don't.
prefer, that they actually prefer weaker, more aloof, and simpish kind of men. That's the kind of men that they prefer, because then they can control and manipulate them, and use
Is
the kind of tactics that they've traditionally used to try to
mm-hmm.
check.
Agreed.
we,
Agreed.
Yeah, just look at the TV shows and the things in the entertainment and in the literature that black women like, right? Anytime you see black women produce their own literature, even their own TV shows, guess where black men are? They're in a subordinate position.
Mhm.
Always, BGS. Always. It's always like that. I've noticed it.
Uh oh, you dropped out.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that there's the old saying is if when people tell you who they really are, believe them. And I don't think black men believe black women are who they are. We keep saying no, or there has to be a reason that they're not who they are, or they're not that they're acting this way. I think I sent Dr. Johnson something that a sub sent me was in Detroit was one of the first all male black schools, right? Uh, and guess who filed a federal lawsuit? It wasn't white women, it wasn't white men, it's black women.
Mhm.
But when you talked about TV shows,
Mm-hmm.
I just recently, man, on Netflix saw a show called The Upshaws, and Michael Epps
Mm-hmm.
is the dad in this show. You should see how bad they talk about Mike Epps in this show, bruh.
Mm-hmm.
The kids talk bad to him.
Mhm.
So okay, so we already know what the dynamics related to reproduction in the black community are. Like, there are black men who have a lot of kids, okay,
Mm-hmm.
from different women. But it's also true that there are a lot of women who have different kids from different men.
67% of
But you
black
don't
women
see
with children.
but you don't see television shows
Mm-hmm.
with those women at the head of the family. So what we get is the narrative that you got this pure woman who's chaste and done everything right, but then you got the black man who's a wayward, what can I say, a troglodyte of
Mm-hmm.
sorts, who spreading the seed everywhere.
Yeah, who
Okay,
needs to be managed and controlled.
who needs to be managed and controlled.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
I
But
believe they've been pushing that narrative about 40, 45 years in mainstream TV, correct, GG? In BGS, they've been pushing that narrative on us for about 45 years
You
strong.
like you have one show where there was a strong black male in that series, and that was Good Times, and that was the only one. That was the only one in the last 50 years.
And what he only lasts 2.5 seasons on the show, correct? They had to write him out.
Mm-hmm.
and what's funny about this show, this Upshaw show, he's got a gay son.
Mm.
They had to interweave that into the storyline. So he's got a gay son.
Mm-hmm.
He's got kids all over the place. And his wife is, for the most part, leaving him sexless,
Mm-hmm.
justifiably so. And she kicked him out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to reveal this, what I'm saying, but I mean,
That sounds about right. Yeah.
she kicked him out of the house because he was selfish, and he's a philanderer, and he's got a gay kid.
So
And he's
wait.
irresponsible and childlike. She's mature and she's responsible.
Okay. So
He
what does he
wants
do?
to participate on
What's he
this
doing?
show?
Sleeping in his car or what?
I don't know where he's sleeping, but I mean, you know, he has a garage. But you got to watch the show, man. I don't want to reveal
Okay.
too much, but this is
Gigi,
worthy of analysis, bro.
Gigi,
Yeah, we got to get
does
the
the
likes up,
children?
man. I'm about to stop the stream, man. We got like all these people watching. We got 189 likes, but we got 267 people watching.
Let's
So
get the likes
otherwise,
over 200. Let's get the
huh?
likes over 200. Come on, y'all. Get the
Yeah,
likes over
get the
200.
likes over 200, man. Cause right now what we got some cowings and eavesdroppers and some haters in there right now. You know, and I understand.
Gigi,
I get it, huh?
Gigi, I have to ask you a question. Were the children emasculating them too on the show?
Not really, but one of them was his oldest son was who's gay is
Mm.
oddly enough
So,
he's gay but
they were
emasculating.
allowing a
Hold on.
homosexual child to emasculate a male on entertainment television, and they showing this as normal. That's a sad and sick thing I'm hearing. Very
So
sad.
so what it is you know he had an outside kid,
Mm-hmm.
and so the outside kid is forever utilized as a means by which to check his authority or to, you know,
Mm-hmm.
to shame him. So I mean, you know, like look, I got a father, man. My father got kids by how many different women, man? I got the first woman, my mama was the second woman, and he had two more after that he had kids with. I would
Mm-hmm.
never emasculate my father or talk to him like he was some sort of, you know, like person that
Yeah.
wasn't. I mean, we might argue about points and issues, and we might get mad at each other or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. But like for me to, you know, tell him, where were you? You wasn't about X, Y, and Z. That's why I have no, you know, obligation to be involved in your life. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's the kind of, you know. But he'll listen to his mother wholeheartedly, but he won't have any direction from his father at all.
Mm-hmm.
But his
Yeah.
father is under obligation to listen to his son and to care and to love him. But he
Mm-hmm.
has no authority over him.
No. That's the that is the womanist narrative.
So
That
it's
the black men are beta male orbiters. You have Themyscira on the inside, right, and what counts on the outside, or the men on or actually on the outside is beta male orbiters. They orbit and they slide in when needed.
Fuck that! I voted for Krypton.
So, hey, what's
Oh, I forgot. All the fellas in the chat, head on the paddle. Or 1,
Who
2,
that?
3. Whoa! Right now, Gigi will enjoy this because I'm doing my favorite pastimes. I'm smoking a fine cigar, drinking some premium liquor, and I'm on YouTube hanging with my niggas. Just
Man, you
because
gotta
of.
give it into that.
Gods.
But I mean, the only thing I can say is, you know, I'm befuddled by you know, the whole ordeal and debacle. I mean, this woman is going to be able to slip out because you notice that nobody from popular culture has said anything about this woman. I mean, you see the left press talking about it, but only white press. You don't see any major, you know, purveyors of culture coming out and, you know, holding colors under fire for like this money being utilized for, one could argue, the all the wrong purposes.
Well, GG, you already know it's a military strategy, man. If you don't have to worry about a threat if the men are innate. You keep the men strong physically, but the brain inert. So, having a school-age child, as a black man, as a father, as the, you know, I had to tell many of teachers when they try to look for the mom, I said, wait a minute, I'm King Kamehameha of these Hawaiian Islands. And when you actually go to the band principal and be like, last time I checked, you work for me. And she looked back. I said, no, you come forward. Because there's some answers that need to be said. Well, your son was fighting. Was he starting it or was he defending himself? Because, well, we have a zero tolerance policy. Bullshit, you let these motherfuckers roam the streets like fucking Ronin Samurai. Like, so what the hell? Like, if you really had a zero tolerance policy, you would have nobody at the school. I said, okay, should I go down to North Avenue and report this? The Board of Education. But then again, knowing Baltimore and knowing that the fact somebody with a fucking 0.13 was eligible for graduation, what the hell does that tell you? And on a side note, BGS know how pissed I get about that. How the hell you gonna say you didn't know as a mother? I'd rather you tell the truth and say you don't care.
She knew, Charles. She knew. She was living her best delusional life. She was being a dude.
A dude. See, at least if she was being a dude, it would be respectable. She was being a dumbass. Because you notice how you can, let's say you have an absentee father, a guy who only has 10% of influence over the 90% the person who's there. We're supposed to blame the guy.
Yeah.
I'll step back on that one.
What the thing is, if you think about it, if you look at the stats, how come black women are the least married and most divorced at the same time? Because they don't want to be married.
Right.
That's because they fall under that new acronym Kevin Samuels gave them, BGS. They're dudes. Disrespectful, unruly, delusional, entitled, and selfish. And when you think about all those acronyms and you put them together, we're describing the modern day black woman, period, point blank.
Oh, it's not modern. Go look at the Philadelphia Negro with W. Du Bois. He described the exact same thing that we're living through. Black men are always orbiters.
You know what, you're right, BGS. I tried to rephrase it. I meant it's been established since the year 1965.
Yeah.
That's when it came into fruition for them, being dudes.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Somebody's got YouTube on. Somebody needs to turn their YouTube on.
That's Charles. He's got echoes. So
okay,
yeah, that ain't me. Ain't me.
What
this
about
time.
now? What about now?
Yeah, sounds good now.
It's better.
All right, I'm gonna say this and then I gotta run because I gotta go pick somebody up. But it is my opinion that black men have been reduced to middle management in the black community. And if you don't understand what middle management is you have responsibility and no power. You understand what I'm saying? Like, it's like the other day I was talking about single motherhood and stepdads and things like that, and the reason why you remove the biological dad is because the biological dad is the real dad. You would have to fight him on a, upper management to upper management. He's equal. You understand what I'm saying? You replace that guy with either a stepfather or, like you guys are talking about, a beta, because then they can't challenge you. A stepfather has no real rights to speak of, in terms of jurisdiction over the kids in the household and things like that, but he has all the responsibility to provide, protect, and things like that. But yeah, man, me and G was talking the other day about men's positions in the household with them being able to, again, be responsible, for all of those things, but women loving these types of situations, because if anything goes wrong, they could blame these guys, even if it's their choice or whatever the case may be. Black women, they have all this power in the relationship they have with black men and nowhere else.
Exactly.
Their power exists nowhere outside of that dynamic. Actually, it was Ian that I was talking about with this, Ian Graves. That's where their power begins and ends. And they fear any progress or rise in power. Black men, just like white supremacy does. It's the same thing. Black women very much practice white supremacy in the same way. They fear the color purple reality, that white people fear. White people fear, that at some point the black men will, I guess, revisit what they've done to black men upon them. And I think that's the same fear that black women have. They think that once we get, in position, then everybody's going to suffer. They'll get it. White supremacy will get it. So everything black women, everything that they're doing is pretty much an unwritten or overt, contract with white supremacy. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, like I say, look at BLM. As soon as black women got power, guess what they did? They said men couldn't have any. Did they bring men into the organization and gave them equal sharing like the Black Panthers did? No.
No.
The funny thing, and you're comparing it to Black Panthers, and I mentioned this also. When you look at organizations that were run by men, there was a positive effect on the community. We know what the Black Panthers brought to the table, when they were, doing their thing. But when you look at female-run situations, is actually the full-on opposite.
Mm-hmm.
They leech from the community as opposed to bring anything to it.
Ooh, you using fighting words there, kid.
Let's
You can hear, you hear the pink pillars right now going.
See,
So
let's not use leeches, okay? Leeches are noble creatures that were actually put with medical use. Let's call them what they really are: Jezebels.
Well, basically they have what knockoff Gucci boots, right?
Oh shit!
But then let's call them parasites. Then that's a better word.
I like calling them Jezebel. You Jezebel. Ooh,
Well, how about
Jezebel?
Well, look, I mean, but the issue is, at the end of the day, some people call black women in leadership positions black girl magic. Is it officially, like, now that like Colors has resigned amidst all of this controversy, and because she's being forced to be made accountable. Now I don't know, like, I don't think that during the heyday of SNCC that a person like Kwame Ture would have been like, okay, I'm done with it now, because people were being scrutinizing of my behavior within the context of this organization. I don't think that Louis Farrakhan would have been like, okay, well, I'm about to check out of Nation of Islam. Things are getting a little hot around here. I don't think that MLK would have dropped out of being the head or the figurehead of the Poor People's Campaign because some people were beginning to say something. What does it say about Black Girl Magic that it is running from accountability and hiding within the confines of the economic superstructure of corporations within the context of the U.S.? You started off as a so-called socialist, even a communist revolutionary organizer, but now you find yourself safely nestled within the confines of corporatist superstructures. What does that say about the whole? Because to me, this is the nadir of meaning the low point of what Black women actually said that Black feminism, Black lesbian feminism would bring about as results for the improvement of the entirety of the Black community. What is it to say that the figurehead of a movement that's larger than any other, one could argue visibly, in the Black community and in the world at large, that now the head of it or the principal founders of it don't have anything to do with it anymore, and they've run to corporate America?
Yeah. It means it was never organic in the first place, which is something that we said 5 years ago. It's not organic.
And I'm gonna back out. I'm gonna back out because I got another person by the name of Gold Professor. He's contributor to my channel. Shout out to him. I'm gonna check out and then I'm gonna let y'all talk for a quick minute, and then I'm gonna come back in, of course. But I want to check out to give him space. All right. I want y'all to respond to that.
Yeah. Oh, basically, it was never organic in the first place. How are you going to have an organic grassroots organization financed by a billionaire, which is Soros, which is a Soros Foundation, which is their top donor? Because I went down the list of all their donors, and you got maybe almost like $1 billion that was actually donated by different corporations. I said that's not organic. It's not organic at all. And I've heard it as high as $10 billion. So, but all that money has never been accounted for.
BGS, isn't George Soros their biggest contributor by far?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I've documented where BLM has helped some candidates that George Soros actually backed. So I would say that it's really easy if the organization was corporate in the first place. So they're merely replacing CEOs at the top.
These slick bastards.
I want to say what's happening to the panel.
Stop laughing, Doc.
Salute, sir. And no, you keep laughing, Dr. T. You keep laughing. If it made you feel good on the inside because they scandalous, goddamn it, they just scandalous.
But the thing is that Black Lives Matter has the same kind of roots as the Tea Party. Okay. It was never a bottom-up organic organization. It was always a top-down organization for political power. And so it did what it's supposed to do. Got a lot of black women, including Kamala Harris, where they needed to be. So, that's how come they got my message. They got a retirement plan, which is all that property. Which she was smart. She bought property. She didn't. She didn't buy a Cadillac, or she didn't buy a whole bunch of clothes. She actually invested her investment properly. So I have no problem with it. But the thing is, at some point when it was exposed, she was going to have to go. And probably all three of them were looking for to get the bag and make a dash.
Hey, I want to say peace to the panel. And thank you, G with the PhD, for letting me come up. Hey, I wanted to speak on real quick that BML. I was in DC. I travel a lot, and I was in DC, and the BLM people who was coming through, they was in the streets. I didn't see no black people. If I did, maybe one or two. That's what it was.
Because it isn't grassroots. It's like BGS just said, sir. It's a corporation now. It's a shell.
I just wanted to, express that I was literally in it and seeing it.
Go ahead, Doc. I'm sorry.
It just was one thing I want to make sure we keep in mind. BLM exploited a grassroots movement to get into position. Mm-hmm. There has been a low boiling grassroots movement, for decades in the black community. Mm-hmm. And that was what was going on in Ferguson, right? We saw it. They came in and exploited it. Now, here's the thing. That movement never went anywhere. Mm-hmm. It's still present. It's just been superseded in media by BLM. And of course, last year we saw, even liberal white folk kind of exploded. And so the media is either focused on liberal white folk or they're focused on BLM, but that doesn't mean that the grassroots black movement ever stopped. They just they didn't have press, and they never really
or money
or resources, which is why you had the families coming out asking for money from Colors and for BLM. And one of the articles where they're talking about Colors stepping down, they talked about Michael Brown's father making the demands that he made, and they said there was a meeting, but there were no obligations that came about out of that, which is real interesting. But the point, I just wanted to just leave that in here. I don't want to associate too much BLM with the actual grassroots movement that's been going for decades.
Well, actually, the grassroots movement was actually led by men in Ferguson, and that was it was either unintentionally or intentionally suppressed.
Right.
But nobody talks about them. Nobody, you hear about them one by one, but nobody talks about them anymore. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying that anything happened or whether it was intentional. The thing is, whether it's by commission or omission, those movements are suppressed. Same thing in Baltimore, where BLM showed up. Okay, you had grassroots movements led by men that were suppressed. And that's the hardest thing that as far as a black male led movement, a black male anything, right? It's always suppressed. Okay, go ahead.
But let's keep in context when we talk about how that shift happened. Aside from the men that were killed that started all of this, Michael Browns and whatnot, the activists that were killed in Ferguson were black men, tortured to death alive and found in vehicles. There was a group of them, including Darren Seals. So when we talk about that shift, that I think is a significant part of it. Black men were involved, and they were muscled out, and some of them lost their lives. And nobody talks about that even now. That those brothers killed.
I was going to say to let's put it in a easier perspective, because we talking with black people, right? And we talking with black people. So you remember Popeye's chicken, right? Everybody knows Popeye's chicken, right? So in the beginning, it was that old black guy promoting. Then it went to that black lady. Remember, everybody knows that black lady was come to Popeyes. Now you don't see her, do you? You see the corporation. There you go. All right, there you go. That's BLM. All right. You started out with the black man, then you moved him out, then you went to the black woman, and then the corporations took over. The faces came into reality.
Well, you look at go ahead.
I'm sorry, BGS. Sorry for excuse me. Somebody just straightened me out on this. I just overheard one of you gentlemen saying she's been replaced. She stepped down. Miss Collis.
She stepped down. Yes.
Get that. She couldn't stand the heat looking ass. Get the hell out of here. You took all that money.
She is.
You took all that money.
She cashed. She cashed out. Yeah, she cashed out. So
got that bag where she bought 3-4 houses all across the country and just burnt up.
Yeah, I believe Tamika Mallory is going to cash out at some point.
Yeah, that's what happened.
But they want to
got
say
the money.
Come on.
Well, once again, when you're the floor, when you're the foundation, well, the foundation is disregarded. They don't come in the house and take the shoes off. They think, well, that's just the floor, right? But the floor is holding the house up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, come on now.
Yeah, you right. I digress.
Which is why you can't marry out, but they can.
Right.
But the larger question,
go ahead, Doc. Hold on. Go ahead, Doc.
Yeah, the larger question, again, will history look upon BLM, all the money raised, as a low point in Black history, or will it be perceived as a high point in Black history? How will this be remembered?
A bump in the road.
I think it'll be a high point for the people who profited from it.
It'll be just a bump in the road, basically. In a couple years, if the organization actually survives, if it doesn't, they'll actually just put up another one. But it'll just be a bump in the road. Okay, she may or may not have made a mistake. We replaced her. We're actually going to build Black Lives Matter back better.
Yeah, but I still say it would be a high point for those who profited from it. It won't be a high point for those who were the ground floor. It won't be a high point for them.
But it's bad press. That's like the white liberal press are going after them. Okay, they're the ones exposing them because they're the ones actually digging up the records, and so it'll be as far as publicity wise, it's going to be a low point. But the thing is that it's already accomplished its mission, so they can actually go into hiding and rebuild again.
But hold on. Is it the publicity? I mean, is that saying good? Any publicity is good publicity applied? Does that apply?
Having your name spread, yeah. But the thing at some point you got to become accountable, and they know it. The name will be recognized. The thing is, you just have to do a cleanup and then reform it into something else. They've done this before.
Well, hold on, but I think Trouble Man in the comment section is right. He says it depends on who's telling the story.
Yeah,
I tell you, in the academy, especially if you're talking about Black women, and there are more Black women in a position of teaching and instruction than there are Black men. About 20,000 more that we know of. Right? So whether you're talking about Africana studies or whether you're talking about fields comprised more of Black women, when the memory of this moment is articulated by that cast, that group, this will be, the rise of BLM will be considered a watershed moment. And I think partially based on the donations and the resources, they're going to try and frame it as probably the most pivotal and important organization in the history of Black America. I think that demographic in the positions that they control, the narrative will be that not only BLM, but Black female leadership is at the crescendo, and this is the most significant moment.
So it goes back to what I said. The high point will be the ones who profited from it. They will be the ones who will say this was the high point, that pivotal point that you're talking about, Dr. T. That's what the high point will be.
The high point is during the George Floyd riots, when all over the world, BLM, the little white girls and white men were actually wearing BLM T-shirts and all over the world. That's the high point.
Okay? White America.
No. I'm gonna give you pushback, BGS.
Come on, man. That's the high point.
Pushback now. I'm gonna give you the pushback.
You can't.
Now.
Okay, you can't. But you have to have sources. So give me proof.
Okay, hear me out. When that happened to George Floyd, that was the start. But when the BLM became prominent in the public, that was the high point of it.
No, it wasn't. That's the
okay.
beginning.
How was
when you have okay. The thing is, it's not even close, man. When you have people that are not even associated with this country all over the world because of the COVID-19 pandemic, actually flying BLM flags, even though they barely know who the leaders are. That's your high point because now you have worldwide relevance. Okay. Yeah, worldwide relevance. That never happened to BLM before, and that's an accident. It's an accident.
Okay. But the spark was George Floyd, but
they
used the name to elevate the BLM to that high point. George Floyd was the start, was the spark of it, but it's not the high point.
No, the thing is the high point, the George Floyd riots, okay? That whole period, of like 4 months was a high point of BLM with its name recognition, money, donations, everything was the high point of this. Getting their candidates in, all that stuff was the high point of BLM. It is.
So you're speaking of many high points to
accentuate
one high point.
No, what I'm saying is when I say a high point is the period that the stuff happened. Okay.
Okay.
When you have little white girls with BLM painted on their faces, okay. And the thing is, now that the situation has ceded, as it ebbed, the energy's ebbed. Guess what? You don't. White people aren't behind BLM as so much.
Okay, let me ask you. Let me ask you.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so
fellas, I gotta pull out. So I just wanted to thank you.
All right, Dr. T.
Hey, Doc, thank you for coming through and talking, because we're the ones that jump started this conversation. So I'm sorry. I know you got things to do, man. I appreciate your time and your involvement. Thanks, bro.
All good, man. Appreciate it, man. Good to see everybody here. Y'all have a good one.
Hey,
peace
thank
out.
you. Thank you.
Salute, Doc.
So peace, Doc.
And so, look, what I don't want to do is get caught into the minutia of, the crescendo or the nadir of the movement or anything like that. But the question is, I think BLM, in my estimation, is pretty much at the current moment is dead now. It's lost credibility now. I know people are going to continue to yell and scream BLM or whatever the case may be, but I think it's lost its thunder. I don't think there's any more. I don't think there's any more heft there anymore. And I think that, it is correct. It all depends on who's telling the story related to whether or not this is the apex of Black progress or the nadir. Personally, I think it's the nadir, only insofar as you got a group of Black women who were orientated towards improving the condition of Black, people, arguably under the pretext of changing the social conditions in which Black men are executed in the streets. But I mean, the underlying motive was overarching Black politics that was informed by Black feminist politics. And to me, it's clear, to me, at least, if to anyone else, that Black feminist politics can be co-opted just like any other form of politics in the Black community. That just because you're a Black lesbian feminist doesn't mean you're going to be able to lead Black folks to the promised land any more than anybody else. You can fail and become co-opted, cash out, be bought out by means of the bag, just like anybody else. So your politics doesn't make you pure. The ideology behind your politics doesn't make you pure in reference to actually moving the needle on Black progress. That's the end of my story. I'm sticking to it. All right. And
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
you know, I'm going to allow everybody to make a statement, and I'm going to wrap this up because it's Friday. It ain't freaky, but it's a Friday.
No, well, we know you got that candy grandma, and we heard it.
Man,
hey, man,
no,
may I go
man.
first?
Don't forget the lick off.
May I go first?
But at any rate, I'm gonna let everybody go, and whoever wants to go first can, no order, and then I'm gonna pull you out as we go out. So
I'll go first.
Okay.
And I want to say thank you for blessing me to be on the panel with you, you know, esteemed guests. And, you know, G, I could do a morning show, and I always could promote you, man. And I appreciate your presence, brother, and BGS as well. You know, Charles, officer of the daggone law. You know, I support you, man. So I just want to express that to you, fellas.
Hey, man, I thank you, man. I appreciate
yes, sir.
that, man.
Every morning, brother, I say support and subscribe to Green Gorilla G with the PhD and BGS and more. BGS, I refer to you as the data savant, brother. You know.
Oh, I appreciate that.
So, hey, man, you guys be easy, and thank you for having me up, man. I appreciate you.
Hey, take care. Have a good weekend, brother, and thank you, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right.
And you can plug your show if you can, man. Just you know, leave
yes, sir.
Something in the chat to direct
thank you for blessing me to be up here, man. I'm appreciative, man. Real talk.
All right, man. Check out the Gold Professor, bro. Check him out,
All
y'all.
right.
All right, now take care, bro. Next up, whoever wants to come up.
I'll go ahead.
Hey, I haven't said much.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. I think too. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that to your question, you know, is this a win or is this a loss for them? I think it's a win because at the end of the day, and I think I said this on Marcus Aurelius' show, Keep It 100. I think that at the end of the day, Black men or men in general are going to use women as the model of progress for their respective communities. So I think at the end of the day, Black men are not going to allow anyone to tear down BLM because they're going to say, okay, hey, look at what Black women did. And, you know, that's the curse, you know, that we're left with. Instead of building communities, we only have the symbol, and the only real symbol we have is the Black woman. You know, that's what is his name? Malcolm X said. You know, using the Black women as the measure of success of the community is just what men are going to do. And I mean, they've been doing it for a long time throughout history. So, you know, it's a win, you know, for them.
All right, my brother. Well, thank you for joining us this evening, man. You know, you're always welcome on the show, bro. And I'll holler at you until next time, man.
Appreciate you.
Please.
Yeah, I think that is it a win? Yeah. Is Black Girl Magic dead? No. BLM served its purpose. It's got I don't know how many Black women and and LGBTQ in office, and they'll be around for a very long time. You know, including Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is part of that wave, and she's going to be in office for 4 more years. So basically, even though it may have ended, or I still don't believe it's ended, I still think it'll be around. Even though it's had this hiccup, I do believe it served its purpose. It served its purpose for the greater good of so-called Black Girl Magic. So it's going to be around. I think that certain people have to be sacrificed, even though they've been paid off, like Cullors, and probably the other two will I probably actually go to. But them, they cashed in, they've been paid off, and they're going to go right off into the sunset. And they may you probably see them from time to time. Probably the next election cycle. They won't be part of an organization, but you can see them commentating because they still have a name.
Okay, man. Well, thank you, BGS. I appreciate you for coming. And my, response is, to some degree, I think you're right. The reason I think you're right to some degree is because as they move into corporate America, they can really do work, but that work won't be visible, but it'll have a more deeper and more substantive impact than the kind of impact they had above ground. Because now they got now they have control over the media. She's going to be able to use the media to promote her own narrative about BLM.
You know how these structures work, man. You know how these structures work.
I mean, since if you're in the media, you get to tell your own story. She gets to write her own narrative. There you go.
There you go. All right, y'all.
All right, take care, bro. Anybody else want to step up and for the outro?
Salute to you, GG, for this show today. This panel has been immaculate at best. And everything we discussed, we hit on a lot of great topics today. But shout out to Kevin Samuels again. I don't care what nobody say. He's doing good work, and I appreciate that messenger. And that new message he brought on last night, dudes and the acronyms for it, timeless, priceless, and real talk, gentlemen. And I know you listening, Charles, my woo, brother. We need to run a panel on that tonight, just talking about the essence of them dudes and the definition of all of it. And do they stand for it? And are they about it? And we know they are. And Gigi, I hear you laughing in the background because I know that type of laugh. Yeah, you understand exactly where I'm coming from.
Yeah, and I do, man.
Shout out to Charles. Shout out to KRS-One, the Godfather, who I like to call him. God damn it, Kevin, you did it again, son. You did it again. They dudes, man. They dudes. They know it's and buts about it. They can't run from what they are. 1965 established on up. 6 generations of them. They killing us, Petey. They killing us. But I'm out.
Hey man, AL brother. Glad to see you here, man. Thank you so much for your contribution. Glad you stopped by, man. I'll talk to you later, my friend. Enjoy your weekend. Now we are left with 2 others. I don't know if they're still here. Marcus, are you still here? No, Marcus is faded out to oblivion. So we're gonna let my brother from another mother. I don't mean to smother.
Because God damn it, there's no other.
So yeah, man, I don't want to get into
But
a contest of
this guy
things.
is still that motherfucker. But still. Let me put my serious hat on. Yes, give me now. But this is the importance of academia, such as yourself and Dr. T, coming to the forefront. That we got to lead with our brightest and best, who are experts in every field, from law enforcement, cultural studies, philosophy, and as you say, and I quote, once you get to that level, all of these subjects and majors are philosophical at that point. One thing about it, Black men have to stay the course. We have to support, my brother's keeper. We have to support the Gray Faulkner Initiative, where, guess what? A stronger Black man means a stronger community, means a stronger nation. It means legacy. It means generational wealth. It means getting from the bottom and finally raising from the top. See, the problem with Black men, in essence, is you're too damn afraid and you're too damn lazy of what others think. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Black women have a fear of failure. You, my brothers, have a fear of success. Don't let success be your kryptonite. If anything, go forward as bold as a lion. And when you get your victory, hell, don't even speak as soft as a lamb. What you need to do is actually promote brother to brother. I said it before and I say it again. I don't give a damn who's the face of the manosphere as long as the message is getting out. We should promote the brothers who are the face and come behind them as the spook in the door once opened it for us. Now, I will end this, and I'm trying to hashtag this one. You heard it on my show, and I'm going to say it on Gigi's. Make the mission great again. No soldier is above the mission. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Everybody from the top 5-star general to the lonely private who just entered knows the mission. That's the reason why military organization is great. That's the reason why you claim total and utter victory and destruction over your enemies. Now, until you make the mission the priority and great again, all you're going to do is see catastrophic loss and failure. Make the mission great again. I'm going to repeat One more time for the Negroes in the back. Make the mission great. Woo! Thank you once again, GG. The G with the PH motherfucking D. Woo! And God bless.
God bless you, brother. All right, man. So this is going to wrap up today's show. Thank you to all the contributors. Thank you to everybody who gave me a shout out and who dropped in and who bigged me up. Appreciate y'all for that. Thank you to everyone who donated in the super chat. Appreciate y'all. Thank you for everyone who donated to the Cash App: James Washington, Kwame Asante, MLR, and Jeff Rugata. Thank you all. And we're going to close this one out, man. Enjoy your Memorial Day weekends. Be safe, man. Stay out of trouble. I only want good trouble, not the bad kind. Till next time, y'all. One.